All right, so welcome to your second legal research lecture. So this week what we're going to do is focus a bit more on legal resources. So we're going to talk through how law is actually made, which hopefully sounds somewhat familiar to you guys already, but we're going to focus on what documents are created throughout that process. So we're hoping that the idea is that you'll come away with a bit better of an overview of what resources are out there that you can draw upon when you're doing legal research, so researching a legal issue. Sort of hoping that from that you'll know sort of what you can go for, when you might go for it, and where you might find it, which again we're hoping will make life a little bit easier and a little less frustrating and a little bit quicker when you're doing research in the future as well. So some of this should pull together ideas that we're going to be going through in the workshops again. So this is kind of your overview stuff. Did you want to mention anything, or I'll just go for it? I'll just talk. I'll go for it. All right, you can interrupt whenever. Okay, I'm going to ask lots of questions again, so just be prepared for that. Okay, so yes, this is working. Apologies for the screen. Apparently there's a problem with the motor, and the power's unplugged, so we can't do anything about it. So focus that way. Okay, so first up, we're going to look at legislation. So obviously we've got a picture of Parliament up there. First stage usually is a bill is introduced into Parliament, which is the first reading speech. That's kind of what that's officially known as. So it's just usually the minister responsible, the person responsible, standing up and saying, I'd like to introduce this bill. That's pretty much it. It's called this, and it's introduced. Now, do you guys know what document goes along with a bill sometimes? Gets produced at the same time? No? All right. You might not have, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to look to you every now and then to see what they should know.
I have mentioned it once, but
okay. All right. So
it's something that explains the nature of the bill. It's explanatory memorandum, that's right.
Yay. I was going to say the initials are up there now.
Oh.
So you could get that, yep. So that goes along with a bill.
Yeah, it's only the Commonwealth, I think.
Yeah, so it's not every state. So South Australia very rarely has them. Sometimes with big pieces of legislation, I have noticed they'll send one out to us as well, but not every jurisdiction. So Commonwealth definitely has them. So do you know why that's useful? Just kind of going by the name. It explains the bill, yeah. It explains the bill. So it's really useful if you've got an act, sometimes looking at the explanatory memorandum. So you're learning about statutory interpretation this week, I think, in CRIM. Yeah. Have you had that lecture yet, or is that still to come? You've had it? Okay, so hopefully some of this will fit in with what you've heard already. So that can be a really good document in terms of interpreting an act. Okay, so next up, hopefully aware of what happens. So the bill is then debated. Okay, so the minister again will stand up and explain what the bill is all about. So sometimes they'll just say, just kind of insert the explanatory memorandum, and that will be it. And then other people will sort of debate about it, so talk about the merits of it. And do you know where all of this is recorded? So someone is actually sitting down there writing down everything that people are saying. Yep. Hansard, yep, that's right. So that's another resource that you can draw from. So again, when you're interpreting an act, sometimes those debates are really handy to get an idea about what people were saying about it at the time that it was introduced and going through the process of Parliament. So that's another great source to draw from. Now through this process, this might have been something if you'd watched the video you would have picked up on. So sometimes if people aren't really that impressed with what the bill is trying to do or the way in which it's trying to do it, it'll get referred to a committee. So a parliamentary committee, and they'll be tasked with the task. They'll be given the task of really looking at the bill, trying to see what it's actually trying to do and whether this is the best way about it. Okay, and they will come out with a report. So they'll write a report about what it's all about, and then sometimes the bill might get changed, introduced, back introduced, and debated again. Goes through that whole process again. But if it's okay, it'll just go back. So again, that committee report. It's really analysing what the bill is all about and whether it's going to achieve the aims that it's hoping for. So again, that can be really good in terms of interpreting an act as well. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, so the Parliament's got a range of committees, and most members of Parliament sit on a particular committee and they build up certain skills on that committee. They're bipartisan committees, so there's some Labor, some Liberal and some Independents on those committees. and that's their job throughout the year, is to scrutinise legislation and deal with this stuff. Yeah.
Cool, okay. Everyone happy so far? All right, so it goes back and it's still debated. Hopefully at some point it will get passed, and then it will go through the whole process again. If there's a second house in the parliament, it will go through this whole process again in that second house. So it will be introduced, debated, maybe sent to a committee, get changed, come back in and go through all that process again. If it does get changed in one house, it then has to go back up to the other house to get approved again. Have I got that right? It sounds like a very complicated process when you talk about it like that, but it can go back and forth and get changed quite a few times if people aren't happy with it as it goes through. But if it passes, that's what's called the third reading. Have you guys heard of that before? Yep, terrific. All right. What happens after it passes? Yep. Yeah, yep, so that would be the next step. So it comes out as an act, so it gets assented by the Governor or Governor-General. Always forget which is which. Which is the one here?
Governor.
Governor, okay, cool. See, I pretend that I don't know, just to test you guys know. So assented by the Governor-General, and then what is it known as? An act, yep, terrific. So that's your act. So that's more your authorised law, so that's why it's got that little red thing. So that's your law, that's where the law comes from. Okay, so it becomes an act. Then what happens? Is that just it? Does it do anything after that? Sorry? Yep. Oh, published in
the Gazette.
In the Gazette, yes. Yep, that's right. So it commences. So this is where you need to figure out when does it actually start. So it comes out as an act. It might start on the same day. It might start on a different day at a later time. So it won't become law until it's commenced. Okay? So this is where, do you remember from, is this something that you would have covered in Crim? So I'm looking at Sam because you've taught in it quite a few times. Perhaps not yet? Okay, so this is where you can look at a few different places. So the Act itself will sometimes say it will commence on a particular day. Sometimes it will say nothing, in which case you have to go back to the Act's Interpretation Act, and that will give you some clues as to what happens in that situation. Other times it will say to commence on an act, or to commence on a date to be proclaimed, and that will get published in the Government Gazette. So basically keep an eye out for the Government Gazette, and that will tell you the date that it's been commenced. Anytime it commences, it'll be recorded in the Government Gazette, no matter what format it takes. Mm-hmm. The tricky thing is if you've got an act and it says it's to be commenced on a certain day to be proclaimed, you don't know when that date's going to be. So there was one, I think, last year you were trying to keep an eye out for.
Yes, it was the new children's protection legislation.
Yeah, and there was no indication of when that might be, so they were just sitting, waiting. So I think you might have called the government department or something responsible for it.
Yes.
Yeah. So sometimes it's a waiting game.
I had to ask some uncomfortable questions that they had no answers for.
Ooh, that's always fun.
Yeah.
That's always fun. But yeah, once it commences, the Government Gazette will say so, no matter what. Okay, so we've got an act. It's commenced. What's the other type of legislation? So we talked about it last week. We've got an act. What's the other form? Delegated legislation. Yep, so that's it. So the act will say somewhere in there that we delegate power to such and such a body to make more specific rules, and they will come out as delegated legislation. So that's your bylaws, your rules, regulations, things like that. So just as an example, I might just jump out of here. Did you know Flinders University was established under an act? There's actually an Act of Parliament that says Flinders University is now created. Here you go. And it sets out who's responsible for it, so the governance and all of that. It also in there says that Flinders University can make rules about specific things. Now those rules you can find not on that legislation site, but on the Flinders University website. So they kind of live in different places. So sometimes it will be on that legislation website, sometimes it will just be on the website of the body who's created them. So if you're ever wondering about whether university has the right to give you parking fines, the answer is yes. That was a question a few years ago from someone. So yep, the answer is yes. Sorry. Oh, shivers, that's going to go all the way through. delegated legislation. Okay, so that's the resources that are out there that you can use. So the question is where you can find it, and I've given you a clue to one of them already. So where do you think most of this stuff lives? Where do you think you can find all of these resources? Yep. Yep, so legislation websites, that's definitely one place. Yep. Do you know who those are produced by? The government, yep. Yep, so the government will have their own legislation websites. Yep. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, you know I've got a PowerPoint, you know the answers are in here, so we'll just keep going. All right, so parliamentary websites. So a lot of the documents that are created sort of within the parliamentary process, that's where you can go to find them. So things like your bills, your committee reports, Hansard, all that kind of stuff at the top, the explanatory memoranda, that's created by Parliament as part of the lawmaking process. So you can go to their website and find all of that. As you said, legislation is created by Parliament, but usually that's got a separate website that you can find that on. So that's where you can find all your acts, some bills as well, some delegated legislation as well if it's made by a government authority, so rather than somewhere like Flinders University. As we mentioned before, the delegated body, so whoever's been delegated power to make regulations, bylaws, etc. Sometimes you might find the rules just on their website. So again, if it's not a government authority, you'll find it on that other website. And of course, OSLI. OSLI is a great place for pretty much all of this stuff. So OSLI gets the raw documents from Parliament and just pops it up on their website. So that happens throughout Australia, which is fantastic. And they get more and more stuff all the time. So it's really good. And the good thing about all of this is that all of these bodies have an interest in making this information available for free. So Parliament wants people to know about laws. OSLI is all about free legal information to everyone. So lawyers, students, the general public, everyone. So all this stuff you can find for free. So Google is your friend for this stuff. All right? So that's always good to know. All right, did you want to mention anything before we head on? No? Okay, we'll keep going then. All right, okay, before I move on to the next stage, just want to give a quick quiz. So which of these resources can help you interpret an act? Just want to see who's listening. Yep.
Legislation, acts, interpretation.
Yep, so that's one. Anything from this list up here though? Yep. Hansard, yep, so that's one. Yep. Yep, explanatory memoranda is the other. And what's another one that's up there? Committee report, exactly. So pretty much the ones right at the top, they're the good ones for interpreting an act. And which resource can help you find out when an act commences? Government Gazette, awesome. See, there you go, quick quiz. Oh, we should have had chocolate for today. Oh, you got chocolate up in your office? Sorry, we won't do that. Oh, now I'm teasing. Oh, that's bad. All right. Okay, so there's all that legislation out there. We just wanted to quickly talk about how you can find out about it. So again, there's people out there who've got an interest in making people aware of all these changes that happen to legislation. Not every single change, because some of them are quite minor and don't impact many people, but things that are really big that are going to impact a lot of people, sometimes in the public interest for them to know about. So there might be a news article that says there's a big change that's happening, particularly in areas of criminal law or something where a really bad criminal or crime has happened and the law is a bit iffy around it and the public decide that's really not good enough, that person wasn't punished enough, or there's, something's not quite right, so they change the law in response to that. Often that will make the news. That's the kind of thing that will make the news. Other times you might find a government department responsible for the change will put out a press release or something on their website. So this is where you can find a lot of things around kind of property law, like building regulations, anything to do around council stuff, all kinds of things that government's involved in. And we talked last week as well about the Law Society and the Legal Services Commission and people like the law firms as well. They've got an interest in letting their sort of client base, their base, know about what changes are happening. So sometimes those can be a good place just to get your head around what's actually happening, what changes are being made and why. Okay, but there are only big things that people need to know about. The publishers will also get involved, and the people who've done the workshops, this will be really familiar to you already. So the publishers will get involved and they will talk about these different acts, the different sections of the Act, delegated legislation, all of what it means in their sources. So if a definition comes out in a new Act, that'll go in a dictionary. If it makes a major change to something significant, they'll talk about it in the encyclopedia and they'll reference that new Act or that change. And if it's something that people will be really confused by, they'll probably add it to their textbook as well. So that's where you can kind of learn about and understand what's happening with those sources there. Cool. Everyone good with that? As I said, if you've done the workshops, you'll have that really embedded. If you haven't done the workshops, that's what we go through this week. All right. Anything to say? We'll move on to...
Okay.
All right. We're getting through pretty quick, actually. So that's pretty good. All right. Now, we talked about legislation, so an act being made. But obviously acts don't stay the same over time. Okay? And this might be something that you've talked about a bit already. So hopefully this just reiterates something that you've heard before. Hopefully it won't make it more confusing. Hopefully it will just might consolidate for people who haven't really grasped it yet. So as I said, an act doesn't stay the same over time. It might change depending on society and needs and whatever. So if you just kind of imagine a timeline. So if we think we had an act that was originally passed in 1935, so we've got the Criminal Law Consolidation Act, we'll just pretend that it's that. So say something happened in 1991, so like we're saying, crime happened, public decided the response wasn't good enough, we need to change the law. Goes through the process of Parliament and they actually change the law. So they pass an amending act. Now, you don't have to take that original act and the amending act and kind of mash the two together. That would be a waste of everyone's time. But that's what used to have to happen way back in the day. Sorry, yep, you're nodding a lot.
I used to do that.
You used to do that?
Yes.
Yay, lucky you. So instead what happens now, which again is really lucky for you guys, is that Parliament will merge the two together. So they'll take the original act, they'll make the changes that were made by the amending act, and they'll publish a new version. So they'll come up with a current version of the act. Okay, so you've got kind of your original 1935 version now, you've got an amending act, and now you've got a current act. So you've got 3 acts that exist. Okay? Usually the one that you want is the current version. All right? Okay, so that's 1991. Say again something else happens in 2013. People go, that's not good enough, the law needs to change. Parliament goes, yep, it needs to change. They pass another amending act. So this time might be about organised crime or something bad has happened in that area, they need to do something new about that. So they pass another amending act. Now again, you don't have to take that old current act and the new amending act and merge it together. Parliament does that for you. So they come out with a new current act. Okay? Is this making sense so far? Everyone's okay? Cool. All right. So of course that old current act from 1991, that's no longer current. Okay? So that will get crossed out and you'll see that's the historical version of an act. Okay? So I might just go back to the legislation website so you can kind of see, if you haven't already, let's see if it's actually got this for here. Yep, so there we go. So this is the Flinders Uni Act. So you see at the top there's the current version, so that has all amendments that were made up to, looks like 9th of October 2017, so that was the last time the Act changed, and then a new version came out. All the other historical versions include all the changes that were made during the period, so it means that there were no changes made between the 1st of June 2007, God, for like over 10 years. I guess nothing really needed to change. So every time a change happens and commences, a new version will come out. So you'll get an old historical version. Does that kind of make sense? Yep, okay. So obviously if you're looking at what the law is today, you go for the current version. Why is the old version useful? Why do they still have that there? Yeah, so right at the...
So if a crime or something was committed in relation to the act in the past, then you have to use that time.
Yep, exactly right. So if something happened in the past on a particular date, you need to know how the law looked at that day. Okay, so that's why you'd have to go back to those historical versions. Awesome, so you know all this stuff. This is great. At least now you know where you can find it as well if you weren't quite sure. Cool. All right.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say about
Yeah,
that? Yep.
changes can still be going on at the university through the changes to the regulations and the bylaws. So they could increase the price of parking without that going through the legislation. So legislation will only make changes to the Act in a big way. So most of the stuff that's in an Act will be big structural stuff that doesn't need much changing over time. The stuff that does need a lot of changing, that's fees, regulation, things that need to be changed regularly will go in regulations, and they can be updated quite quickly. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Does anyone have any questions so far? Are you all happy? Cool. Alrighty. Okay, well, let's move on to cases then. Right, which you might have heard the process about. Not quite sure, but we'll talk through it. Okay, so cases taken to court. So someone submits to the court they want to sue so and so, or Department of Public Prosecution say we want to charge so and so with an offence and take that to court. Do you know what documents produced at this time? Might not have heard of it. No? Okay. Documents called, sort of as a catch-all phrase, as pleadings. Yep.
Statement of claim.
Yep. So the person who's bringing the case, if it's a civil thing, they'll produce a statement of claim saying, this is what my claim is, this is what I think's happened, and this is what we want to happen. And then the person who the claim is against, they'll submit a statement of defence. That's right, isn't it? Always have to remember these things if they're the same. So statement of claim, statement of defence, and then they've got different versions for the criminal law and appeal cases as well. So that's what gets submitted to the court to say, let's start a case. Okay. Now this document you can't find. Most generally, you can't find it. There's no real public interest in it being made available to the public, so it's generally not made available. I think for some federal cases there is a site which does have some of that stuff because it more is in the public interest. So for a high court case, people would need to know what people are submitting a claim about. So sometimes you can find those, but General Magistrates Court, District Court, no, you're not going to find those. Okay, then it's argued in court. And again, there's a document that's produced at this time. Any guesses as to what that is? If you think like Parliament, someone's sitting in there typing up everything. Transcript, yep, that's it. So again, there'll be a transcript that's produced. Again, that's just an internal document. You're highly unlikely to find that, okay? So if you want to see what's actually happening in court, you're probably not going to find out too much by going to kind of official case law sites or anything like that. The one thing that you can look at though, if it's a public interest case, so two really high profile figures or really major crime or something like that, this is where your court reporters come into effect. So you've still got people whose job it is, so journalists whose job it is to sit in court and write about what's happening. So if something sensational is happening, you might find some article in the newspaper about it, but that's pretty much the only place. And again, it's only if it's a big public kind of case that people would be interested in. Okay, so that's your transcript. Not going to find, sorry about that. Okay, so once all the arguments are finished, a case is generally decided. Now, not every case will get to even that stage. So some cases might be settled out of court. Even before they're taken to court, that might happen. Or it might be, if it's a crime, they might plead guilty. So again, there's no real argument that's happened. There's no real detail of that. So again, if it's a high profile enough case, the news might report on that. So you might hear about that there was a settlement and maybe some terms of it if they get leaked, or that someone pled guilty and what happened after that. But generally, if there's no decision, you're not going to find that much about it. So again, if someone's being charged with speeding, they decide to plead guilty, you're not going to know about that. Unless it was a friend of yours and they tell you. That's the only way. Okay, so if it is decided, again, what document comes out then? If you just think kind of broadly. Judgment, yep. So judgment comes down. Okay, so what happens now is that the court then sends this out to different people. Now, it won't send out every single case, so it will just be the major cases that we'll usually send out. So cases from the higher courts will usually be sent out. But again, might only be if the court decides it's a significant enough case. So did you guys do the reading for this week? There was a snippet about the history of law reporting. Some of you did that. If you haven't, have a quick read of that, because that has a really good description of the types of cases that actually go through the reporting process and the types of cases that they ignore. So it's pretty much cases that have some legal significance that will go through the next process. So cases where they change the law in some way, or they apply it to a really novel set of facts that hasn't been applied in that way before, or where it extends the law a little bit, or
High profile
cases, yeah. So your everyday, just straight application of a law that's been done over and over again, you're probably not going to find anything about. So again, if someone's been charged with speeding, even if they argued against it, depending on what they argued and they got found guilty, that decision isn't going to be out there.
Unless they're a federal court judge.
Unless it's a federal, oh okay, so high profile.
Yeah.
Profile case.
Well, there was that case in Sydney. The guy actually got jailed.
Okay, and the judgment came out.
Yeah.
There you go. But if it's a case where they've gone to court and they've decided to argue against the use of speed cameras, so they're arguing why they might not be a legal device for capturing people speeding, if they've got a real big problem with that, that's the type of decision that might be published, that might go out there, because that's more of a public interest thing. Okay, it's not something that happens every day, but people would be interested in knowing about that. So that's the kind of case that will get reported. Okay, so the court will send out the judgment. So who they send it to, oh, and I always forget. So they'll send it to Ostley and Jade. I always forget Jade. So they'll send it to Ostley and Jade, and they will just pop it straight up on their website, and this is an unreported judgment. So do you know what unreported judgment means? Anyone? Not authorised? Yep, it's definitely not authorised, but it's also something else as well. Anyone else? No? It's basically the unedited thing. So there's no editing that goes on at all. So Ostley will just get, how do you go power through? I'll just have to do this because I keep forgetting how to do it. So Ostley will just get the decision. So you had R against Crab as one of your readings for Crim. So this is that unreported version of that judgment. Okay, so it's basically a citation for it, the court it was from, the judges, catchwords that the court assigns, and then it goes straight into the decision. So that's all. So Ostley just gets the case, pops it up on their website. They don't do anything to it. This is just exactly what they get from the court. Okay, so there's no editing involved. So that's what makes it unreported. It's basically that unedited aspect of it. Okay, so that's what happens there. Whoops. I really do need to figure out how to do the thing. All right, so Ostley Jade get it, just pop it straight onto their website. The publishers also get hold of it, and they put it in a case index, which is called a case citator. So have you guys heard of First Point or Casebase yet? Some, yes. We'll be looking at this a lot in the workshops not next week, after the break, sorry, I should say. Hang on, let me just get to my notes. So what they do is they just add basic details about the case to this index. So it's not always the full text of the case that you can read, that's on Ostley. This just tells you about a case. So it will put in the name of the case, so the parties involved, the citation of the case, so what was on Ostley there, so that 1985 HCA, whatever it was. And then it'll give the basic details. So again, like Ostley, it had the court, the judge and the date. And that's pretty much it at this stage. It then does a little bit of thinking as well. So they start to add some value add type of things. So this is more where the editorial people come involved. They look at the case, look at what it's all about, look at what they're referring to, and they put a few extra details in. So this is what you get beyond Ostley. So you get, I thought that was going to highlight. So you get a summary of it and some extra catchwords that either Lexis or Thompson, so Casebase or First Point, provide. We'll also have a list of things that the case referred to in coming to its decision, so any earlier cases or any acts. Okay. Now the brilliant thing about this is that all of that is searchable. So if you just had the name of a case and were told to find it, you could jump into Casebase or First Point and find it. If you needed to find cases that referred to a particular act, you could jump into there, type in the name of the act and find cases that referred to it. So all of that's searchable. So it's really, really good if you don't know of a case to look for and your secondary sources have gotten you so far, this will provide you extra information. Okay, and again, we'll be looking at this a lot in the workshops after the break. Okay, so the case citators do their thing. The publishers also start to really look at the judgment and think about whether they want to publish it or not. Okay, so they want to publish it in a law report series. So this is an edited version, and it's an unofficial one that usually comes out first. So they, again, do some value add stuff. So if you remember looking, how do you toggle between?
Tab.
Alt tab?
Alt tab.
No.
Alt tab.
No.
Tab or alt.
Haha.
Yeah.
Oh, come back. Oh, now I've wrecked it. I think it's that one. All right. What am I looking for? I'm looking for that one. Sorry. Okay. So this is an example of a reported case. So you can see it's very different from the version that you get on Austlii. If you haven't seen one case in both versions, this is kind of the idea. So again, you've still got the basic details that Austlii has, but you've got a lot more as well. So you've got this whole head note section. So again, you've got catchwords that either the court gives, the publishers then might add to that. They might give it a few extra ones as well. You'll get a short summary about what the case is all about. So the facts of the case, the legal issues that were raised, and then what was decided as well and why it was decided in that way. It tells you about all the acts and cases it refers to. Sometimes you might get the arguments that the lawyers of each side presented to court, so a brief summary of what they argued. And then you've got your decision, what was actually held, so the judgment itself. Okay, so you've got all this value-added stuff that goes on in a law report version. So that's the benefit of those reports. Again, because publishers are involved, they do a lot of work in this. That's not free. So the Austlii version, that's free because they just get it and they just pop it up online without any work involved, pretty much. This takes a lot of work, so it costs a lot of money. So come through library resources to get to it. All right, let's see if I can go back and, no. That's what we want. Cool, yay. All right, so that will be an unofficial version will come out. Then I think you'll probably all know what's coming next, I thought. Oh no, what's next? The case citators get involved again. So they realise, okay, it's been reported somewhere else. We're going to add that detail to the case citator. So that's where you can find out the medium neutral citation, where you can find it on Austlii, and also the citation for the unofficial version. Okay. Next up, what will happen is that one of the law report versions, so the version that the publisher has done a lot of work on, written the head note, all of that, they'll then send that back to the court, and the court will go, yep, that's an accurate version of what we said. They'll kind of sign off on it. So sometimes it's just a series that they'll go, yep, that's all good. Other times it will definitely go through that checking process. So it gets reviewed by court, they say it's all good, and that comes out as the authorised law report. And everyone's familiar with that? Yep, so which is the authorised series for the High Court? Commonwealth Law Reports, yep. And do you know for South Australia? Yep, South Australian State Reports, yep. It's always really want to say law reports, but no, South Australian State Reports, yep. So that version comes out, and again, the case citators will go, oh, that's come out in another place, another version has come out, and they'll add that detail to the case citator. Okay, so again, if you wanted to find out if a case had been reported in an authorised series, you can check Casebase or First Point, that will tell you. Okay. All right, everyone happy with that? Yep, so that's why you see all different versions of a case, because it's been published by different people in different places. That's all it means. But when you're here, which is the one you want to go for? Authorised, excellent. Very good. If no authorised version is out, that's when it's fine to go for the version that you find on Austlii or in another law report series, that's okay. But always double check your case citator to find out, just to make sure it hasn't been reported in an authorised series.
Can I add to
Yeah,
that? So
please do.
sorry, I'm hiding down the front here. If there is an authorised report and you do not use that as part of your assessment, you'll be marked down for that. So make sure you do check to see if there is an authorised report and use that one as much as possible.
Yep, cool. All right, next thing that will likely happen, so same with acts, they don't stay the same over time. Common law doesn't stay the same over time, but it's not that someone actually comes in and changes the judgment that was already there. Instead, it's referred to by later cases. Okay, so a later case might come along and say, yep, that judgment's really good, we're going to follow what they did. We're going to go with the law that they said. Other times they might go, the facts of our case are so different, we're going to distinguish the law and we're going to apply it in a slightly different way. So we're not going to exactly follow what they did, but do it slightly differently. Other times they might go, no, that decision was terrible. That law is no good. We're going to do something completely different and overrule what they did. Okay, so you've got some positive things that they might do, some iffy things that they might do, and some bad things that they might do. Again, we'll go through all this in the workshop next week, but that's the process of figuring out if something is good law or not, is to have a look at those later cases. And again, luckily, these case citators know that that's a tricky thing to do. So what they will do is they will find out every time a judgment has been considered by another case, they will put that detail into their case citator and actually tell you how it was used as well. So they'll have a little giveaway to say whether it was applied, whether it was followed, whether it was distinguished, whether it was overruled, reversed, whatever it might be. So however it was used. So that's your really good way of figuring out if a case is still good law, or even just to find other relevant cases on a topic. Really, really handy. Okay, I think that's all of that. So again, just another quick quiz. So which of these resources can help you search for cases on a topic? Casebase, yep. Casebase, First Point, the case citators, yep. Sometimes Ostley as well can be really good, but remember you probably get lost amongst a sea of cases. With Casebase and First Point, you're searching just over a little summary, so it's more likely that you'll find cases right on the topic that you're interested in. Yeah.
So why have two if they're both doing the same thing?
Different publishers, different people, that's all. Yep. So Casebase is Lexis, First Point is Thomson. So they're two different legal publishers, they both want to make money. Sorry? Yep, yep. So we've got both, because we have to, not have to, but it's good for us to get you used to both, because depending on where you might end up, you might have one or the other. Yep.
Yeah, it is important to use them both if you can. If it really matters, they'll both give up different results. Sometimes we'll give up a new case that you didn't know about, and sometimes I even cross-check that against Ostley to give me a third one as well, just so I don't miss out. I mean, the worst thing is you'd go to court and you missed out on a case. The other side's got that case. That's it. You're in big trouble. So yeah, you really don't want to just get sloppy and use one. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And there are differences between them, which again we'll talk about in the workshops. If you don't find that case,
you've essentially not found the law, and it could be the most relevant law that exists on that topic.
That's so
but
scary.
You didn't find it. Yeah. So.
All right. Okay, so here's one. Where can you find a High Court of Australia decision from last week? Wow. Ostley? Yep. Why Ostley?
Because it was immediate,
yep.
unedited, and that's first of all.
Yep. Exactly right. Yep. So the answer was Ostley because it's immediate, and that's exactly right. High Court decisions come out usually the same day, if not the next day, on both Ostley and Jade. I think with the constitutional, what was it about? Yeah. People who weren't, so members of Parliament who were disqualified on the basis of having heritage from another country or citizenship, that's right. We kind of monitored which it came out on first, and I think Jade won by about half an hour. So it came out within hours. It was up on Ostley and Jade. The law report process, because it does go through the editing process, it does take a long time. So the authorised law report could take up to a year. Okay. Yeah,
Can I just ask, what's the difference between Jade and Aussie?
pretty much the same. Again, just two different organisations with an interest in getting cases out there for free. So Jade is just cases though. It was primarily High Court cases and Eastern State cases at the start. So that's why I always forget about it, because the SA coverage was terrible at the beginning. But it's much better in coverage throughout Australia now. Yep, but it's just cases. But they do some funky like diagrams and things as well, so you can really get lost in colourful spreadsheets and mind mappy type things, which Austlii is just kind of what you see is what you get. They don't do anything too fancy.
I've noticed lately Jade is starting to offer some sort of case citatory type lists now
Okay.
as well.
All
So
right.
they are actually getting better. Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe we'll look at it in the workshops as well. As
With
I
a
say, I
little
keep
button.
forgetting about it.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting about it. Okay, and where can you look if a case hasn't gone through any reporting process and you want to learn about it and it's a high profile case? Yep. You can possibly go to the court. Yeah, if you really were desperate to know about it, you can apply to the court for details, but it costs a lot of money if you want to get any documentation out of it. Yep. Yep. Anyone else? No? That's the news. That's when you can go beyond these sources here and just go to a news site, okay? But that's, again, just for high profile cases where nothing has been reported at all. Newspaper, yep.
Media,
Yeah, yep.
but
It's,
that's 90% bullshit. Not being funny, but
no, that's why I just went, yeah.
So where would you get your news from? I mean, on a regular basis, you know, give us a sense of where would you get your news from? Yeah. Sorry.
Guardian.
Yeah. Guardian. Yep. Okay. Guardian online. Yep.
Yep.
But a lot of these have paywalls, don't they? So you can sort of get half a story, but then you have to pay more to get your news. Yeah.
Yeah.
so you're saying you've got to be selective with your media, it's not just any old.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can read between the lines. So sometimes you'll get the idea of what was actually talked about, and then you can just ignore their kind of analysis and critique and their sensationalism kind of stuff. So start to apply that just critical thinking as to what the focus is on that. Yep. Okay. Right. So, okay. Again, secondary sources will come into the fore in terms of helping you learn about what cases are coming out and what they mean and how you can understand them and figure out how to apply them to later things. So again, you news, probably not so much the government department, but law society, law firms might put out something if it's a big case that really impacts on people. And again, if it's significant enough, the law publishers will add it to their secondary sources, which we've seen for people who've done the workshops already this week. We've definitely seen that and how that's helped us. The other thing that comes out for cases, which again you might have heard of and might not, if it's again a significant enough case, people will write a short case note or a journal article about it. So this might be an academic who works in a university, might be someone who's practicing law in that area and they decide it's major enough, but it might be confusing enough as well. So they'll write a kind of a summary and analysis of what it was all about. So these can be really good if you're really stuck and don't understand a case at all. Sometimes these give a really good summary of what happened and what it means moving forward. Also good if you're doing research essays, journal articles, just in general, if it's about a case, about an act, about any aspect of the law or legal system, journal articles are fantastic for that sort of critical analysis of something. Okay, one thing before we go, case notes, also added to case base and first point, because again, they're seen as a significant thing that helps you know about cases or learn about cases or understand them. So the case citators, add them to their index too. One thing before we go, sentencing decisions. Just to let you know that, again, these generally aren't available that much or for very long. So you often won't find them on Austlii, or they won't be in any report series whatsoever. Sometimes they'll just be on the court website, and sometimes only for a few months as well. I don't know why, but that's just what they do, because sometimes those can be really significant to know about what the outcome of a case or any case on a particular crime might be, to see what the sentencing has been like for that crime over the years.
And you'll need to know that. So you'll be doing sentencing as part of your criminal law topic. So you'll actually be reading some sentencing decisions, so you'll get to see some of that as well.
Yeah. Yep. So sometimes they're fascinating, but as I say, they don't live online for terribly long. in all cases. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. All right.
Okay, can I?
Yeah,
Yeah, can
I
I
think
take over?
that's me
I'm gonna
done.